Oh, welcome everyone. So I'm going to begin with reading from the Srimad Bhagavad Gita, chapter 5, Action, Karma Yoga, Action, Krishna Consciousness, text number 7. Yoga yukta vishuddhatma vijitatma jitendriyaha sarvabhutatma bhutatma korvan napi nalipyate. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. First, let's begin by offering our obeisances to Srila Prabhupada. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Tanamane Namaste Saraswati Deve Kauravani Vicharane Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paskatyade Satarane. One who works in devotion, who is a pure soul, and who controls his mind and senses, is dear to everyone, and everyone is dear to him. Although always working, such a man is never entangled. True Prabhupada's purport: one who's on the path of liberation by Krishna consciousness is very dear to every living being, and every living being is dear to him. This is due to his Krishna consciousness. Such a person cannot think of any living being as separate from Krishna, just as the leaves and branches of a tree are not separate from the tree. He knows very well that by pouring water on the root of the tree, the water will be distributed to all the leaves and branches. Or by supplying food to the stomach, the energy is automatically distributed throughout the body. Because one who works in Krishna consciousness is servant to all, he is very dear to everyone. And because everyone is satisfied by his work, he is pure in consciousness. Because he is pure in consciousness, his mind is completely controlled. Because his mind is controlled, his senses are also controlled. Because his mind is always fixed on Krishna, there is no chance of his being deviated from Krishna. Nor is there a chance that he will engage his senses in matters other than the service of the Lord. He does not like to hear anything except topics relating to Krishna. He does not like to eat anything which is not offered to Krishna. And he does not wish to go anywhere if Krishna is not involved. Therefore, his senses are controlled. A man who controls senses cannot be offensive to anyone. One may ask, why then was Arjuna offensive in battle to others? Wasn't he in Krishna consciousness? Arjuna was only superficially offensive because, as has already been explained in the second chapter, all the assembled persons on the battlefield would continue to live individually as the soul cannot be slain. So spiritually, no one was killed on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. Only their dresses were changed by the order of Krishna, who was personally present. Therefore, Arjuna, while fighting on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, was not really fighting at all. He was simply carrying out the orders of Krishna in full Krishna consciousness. Such a person is never entangled in the reactions of work. So the verse again. Yoga yukta vishuddhatma vijitatma jitendriya sarvabhutatma bhutatma korvam napning lipyate. One who works in devotion, who is a pure soul, who controls his mind and senses, is dear to everyone, and everyone is dear to him. Although always working, such a man is never entangled. Ma Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Tanamane Namaste Saraswati Deve Kauravani Vicharane Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paskatyade Satarane. This is one of the fundamental principles of Krishna consciousness. as it says in the Srimad Bhagavatam, Yoga Yukta Vishuddhatma Vijitatma Jitendriya Sarva Bhutatma Bhutatma Korvam Napni Lalipyate. That one who works in devotion with a pure soul, actually, as it says in the Bhagavatam, Yata Turo Mula Nishechinena Triptyanti Tatskanda Pujo Pushaka Prahanorachaya Tendriyanam Tataiva Sarvapanam Atuteja. Ita Tura Mula Nishechinena. So Taror means a tree. Just like one waters the tree, the root of the tree, then naturally the water goes to all the leaves and branches. Ita Tura Mula, Mula means the root. So if we put water on the root of the tree, then we can expect that all the different parts of the body will also receive the water. Ita Tura Mula Nishechanena Triptyanti Tatskanda Bujo Pushaka. Triptyanti means to satisfy. So the only way of satisfying the entire tree is to pour water on its root. If one tries to water each leaf and branch, the tree will never be satisfied. Itatura mula nishechanena triptyanti tatskanda. Skanda means the trunk. Mula means the root. Ditatura mula nishechanena triptyanti tatskanda pujo pushanka. Pujo means the branches. And similarly, itatura mula nishechanena triptyanti tatskanda pujo pushanta. Itatura mula. Similarly, if you give food to the stomach, then naturally the nutritional part of the food will be distributed to all the different parts of the body. So, in the same way, itatura mula nishechanena triptyanti tatskanda bujo pushaka pranaharachchaya tendriyana tataiva sarvahanam atuteja. Similarly, if we serve Krishna, then all the demigods and all other living entities will also be satisfied. Now, we find in the case of Hiranyakashipu that Prahlad Maharaj was serving Krishna very nicely, fully absorbed in Krishna consciousness, but Hiranyakashipu didn't apparently seem very satisfied. As a matter of fact, he was trying to kill Prahlad Maharaj in so many different ways, not the sign of deep satisfaction. So how is it that Prahlad Maharaj was serving Krishna and yet Hiranyakashipu wasn't satisfied? Because those who are asuras, they'll never be satisfied if one becomes a devotee of Krishna. In other words, people who are generally not envious of Krishna will not be envious of Krishna's devotee. And if one is envious of Krishna, then one will be envious of everyone, including Krishna's devotee. But on the other hand, we find the six Goswamis, Krishnat Kirtana Gana Naktaro, Premamritam Bonidi, Dira Dira, Janapriya Priyakaro, that the Dira and the Adira, those who are sense-controlled, the Diras, and those who are uncontrolled, had uncontrolled senses, the Adiras. The six Goswamis were dear to all different classes of people. Still, we find Lord Nityananda going up to Jagai and Madai and asking them to kindly chant the holy names of Krishna. Jagai and Madai initially didn't find it very satisfying. As a matter of fact, it appeared that Madai was trying to kill Lord Nityananda by throwing an earthen pot at him. But who's actually being satisfied? In other words, those who are of an asuric nature, they're never satisfied. No one could possibly satisfy them. But the soul within the body, the bewildered soul, by association with the devotee, somehow or another, they'll become satisfied. The soul is getting the best opportunity to get satisfaction in association with the devotee. Whether they take advantage of it or not, that's up to them. Still, the devotee is offering the best service. So the example probably gives at the end is that Arjuna was fighting against so many people on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, so many warriors, he was piercing them with arrows. He wasn't giving them sweet words. Obviously, when you get pierced by an arrow from someone, it doesn't feel very good. But because they became liberated, Arjuna was giving them the best service possible. In the material world, there is nothing better than liberation. Liberation means to realize that we're eternal. Now, everyone in the material world is struggling hard to maintain the body. If you go to the doctor and the doctor says, "My dear sir, that you only have 2 months to live," how would you feel? Immediately, people could become depressed. Just like there was one devotee, he went to the doctor, and the doctor said, "You have a heart condition. You have 1 year left to live." And it's true. And then this particular devotee, he went to Prabhupada and said, "Srila Prabhupada, I only have 1 year left to live. What should I do? Can you give me sannyas?" So Prabhupada said, "I'll give you Babaji." So Prabhupada gave him Babaji, asked him to chant 64 rounds a day, not to preach, to stay in Vrindavan and chant. So 1 year went by. Well, half a year went by. And the devotee said, "Prabhupada, it's very difficult to stay in Vrindavan and just chant all the time. I'd like to go somewhere." So Prabhupada said, "All right, I'll give you sannyas instead of Babaji." So Prabhupada said, "You can be a sannyasi." So he was a sannyasi for some time. Then a year went by and nothing happened. He didn't die. So he went back to the doctor and said, "Wait a second, he said I was supposed to die in a year. I'm still alive. What happened?" So the doctor checked him again and found out that actually he had made a mistake. He said, "You're not going to die." So the devotee said, "You mean I'm not going to die? So what's the good of being a sannyasi?" So he gave up sannyas and went back to be with his girlfriend again because he was going to live forever. So everyone is struggling to live as long as they can in this material world. As a matter of fact, although it appears that there are many conversations to go on, just like in the Srimad Bhagavatam, in the beginning of the end of this first canto, Parikshit Maharaj was asking the sages, what is the duty of a person who is about to die? Now, generally speaking, if you go to the university and you ask the learned professor, "My dear learned professor, you've studied for so many years, you have so many degrees, so please tell me one simple question that's very important to me. What is the duty of a person who's about to die?" So what will the learned professor probably do? He'll probably call the police and have you arrested for threatening him. The police will say, "What he said?" He said, "What is the duty of a person who's about to die? I took it as a threat." Because people have no idea what to do. No one asks such a question. unless they're threatening someone. But Parikshit Maharaj asked Shukadeva Goswami when he came, what is the duty of a person who's about to die? And Shukadeva Goswami replied with the words, Varyan Eshate Prashna Kritan Loki Hita Ripaha Atmavan Samatam Pumsam Shrotivyadishu Yatparaha. That this question is actually glorious. It's not something to be embarrassed about asking. It is the actual beneficial, it's actually beneficial for everyone. It's the one question everyone should be asking, because it's the one thing we all hold in common, that none of us are going to be around here for that much longer. Now, naturally, if you're sitting in your car, if you're outside, if you're in your house, and someone dressed, covered with some uniform, completely covered, a group of people come with masks on and completely covered, you can't tell who they are, and they grab you and start to drag you somewhere, what's the first thing you might think? Probably most people would think, where are you taking me? They probably would ask, my dear sir, my dear sirs, please tell me what's for lunch today anyhow? No, you probably ask, where are we going? So everyone is going to leave this body soon, and they're going to go somewhere. Now, we're only going to be in this body for a short period of time, and compared to where we're going next, and subsequently to next, is eternity. So naturally, it should be an important question to ask, where am I going next? Because that's going to be for a long time. Well, we're only going to be in this body for a very short time. So Parikshit Maharaj asked that question, and Shukadeva Goswami was quite pleased by the answer. And he said it's beneficial for everyone. The person who asked the question, certainly it's beneficial for them. The person who answers the question will be reminded of the answer, or who answers the question will be reminded of the answer. And all the audience, they'll also understand something important, because everyone in the audience is also going to have to leave their body today or tomorrow. But what do people ask about? Shukadeva Goswami says, Shrotavyadishu Rajendra, Srinam Shanti Sahasra Shaha, Apashitam Atmatattvam Griheshu Grihamedinam. Everyone has hundreds and thousands of questions. It's not that only Parikshit Maharaj was asking questions, but everyone has hundreds and thousands, everyone has questions. We're questioning all the time. When one sannyasi, when he was a child, asked his mother, my dear mother, what happens when we die? His mother's reaction was, are you sick? Now, if you ask a normal question, what's for lunch? What's the weather like? People think you're normal. And if you ask questions that they can't answer, that they're afraid to answer, then they become very disturbed and thinking that you're disturbing them by these questions. Now, what is the actual question, Shukadeva Goswami? What are the people talking about? Nidraya riyate naktam, bhavavayena chavavayam, divya charte haya rajan, katumba bharanena va. Generally, people are asking, divya charte haya rajan, nidraya. Nidraya means sleeping. So people are asking, what's the best way of sleeping? If you go on the internet, there are many courses you can take to find out how to sleep. Because devotees don't have to take those courses because they sleep everywhere. all they do is have to go to a class and they fall asleep. But many materialist people, they can find no means of sleeping. As I've said before, when I was at the airport one time, one other book distributor came up to me. We were distributing books, and he said, I just sold a book to a man who said he couldn't read because he had insomnia. He said, I'd like to take your book, but I can't read it because I can't concentrate enough because I can't go to sleep at night. So the devotee said, this book is perfect for you because we have a class on this book every day, and there are 50 people in the class. And as soon as someone begins to read this book, everyone falls asleep. So the man said it's worth a try, and he took the book and paid for it. And he sat down on one of the seats in the airport and tried to read the book and fell asleep. So it works. You don't have to pay for an expensive course to learn how to sleep. You just have to pick up the Bhagavatam and read it. Nidrya riyate naktam vavavayena chavavaya. And at night, if people have enough energy, then they try to gratify their senses through sex life. But in order to maintain having a nice bed and sex life, some place to sleep and some sex life, then there is divya charte hara rajan, that during the day you have to work and make money to pay for this. Kutumba Varanenava. And then as soon as you make money, then the whole family goes shopping to pay for that, the different dresses and the decorations in the house, pay for the rent and everything, so that one can have a safe, secure, happy material life. So this is the goal, the aspiration. Whether one is living in a hole in the ground, as some animals do, or one is building a nest, more or less it's the same thing. The birds during the day, they work hard to get different little twigs and build a nest. And at night, they sleep in the nest, or they produce little other baby birds. So this is material life. Deha patya kalatradishu atma saneshva satsupi tesham pramato nidanam pashanapi napashyati. It appears to be a very glorious activity that's going on in the material world. So many newspapers, so many television programs, so much news in the internet about the latest pandemic or war going on. So many things to be going on. Such a complicated place. But actually, what does it get down to? I mean, deha apatya kalataradishu. That this body and things in relation to this body, such as the children and the wife and other things, we're collecting these things simply to protect our body. Deha patya kalatradishu atma sanyeshu satsupi. Sanyeshu, the soldiers. My wife will protect me, my husband will protect me, my children will protect me when I get old. My dog will protect me. Even the Yamadutas come, and somehow or another they can get through my wife and my children. They can never get through my faithful dog. He'll definitely protect me from the Yamadutas. Tesham pramato nidanam. So this is the madness of the material world. Everyone is working hard to get a little happiness. But what is happiness? It's the security that today I'm going to be able to eat, sleep, mate and defend, and my fort, the body, my house, my wife, my children, they'll protect me. So tomorrow I'll be able to eat, sleep, mate, and defend. But pashanampi na pashyati. They can see that no one stays here forever. No one is able to surpass death. Everyone dies. Even Brahma dies. What to speak of our insignificant selves. So this emphasis on trying to remain alive just so we can eat and sleep is not actually the purpose of life. As I mentioned before, when Srila Prabhupada was coming back from seeing a movie, well, he wasn't seeing the movie. He was coming back from a doctor's appointment in Los Angeles. And when he was driving back, he noticed there was one movie theater with the title of the movie, Is There Sex After Death? So when Srila Prabhupada came back, he gave his normal class to the devotees that morning. And he mentioned in the class that on the way back from the doctor's appointment, he passed by a movie theater, and the title of the movie was, Is There Sex After Death? So Prabhupada told the devotees that when they go out and preach that day, because many devotees were going out and distributing books and talking to people, he said, you should tell people you meet they don't have to worry that there is sex after death, because that's one of people's main anxieties. What will happen to my sex life if I die? So Prabhupada said, you don't have to worry, because there is sex after death in 8,400,000 species of life. If they know that, then they won't be afraid of death. Everyone is struggling hard to maintain this body because it's the vehicle by which we are able to enjoy in the material world. And therefore they're afraid if I leave my body, I may be deprived of an opportunity to enjoy in the next life, in the next place I'm going to, or I might even disappear and have no enjoyment whatsoever, have no experience. But that's not true. Actually, everyone is eternal, and therefore there is no question of disappearing or not having an opportunity for some kind of enjoyment. But people don't know that. People don't know that the goal of life is to reach Krishna, not simply to maintain some standard of sense gratification, either in this life or in the next one. And they don't know, actually what they're striving for is liberation. Everyone wants to be eternal. In other words, everyone wants to live as long as possible. No one wants to live for only a few years or a few moments. Everyone wants to live as long as possible. So as I said, if you go to the doctor and he tells you, my dear sir, you only have 3 months left to live, then immediately you become depressed. And after a few months, if you go back to the doctor and say, my dear doctor, I'm still alive, what happened? And the doctor examines you and says, actually, I think they're going to live for another 20 years. How joyful you feel. Oh, I'm not going to die. I'm going to live for another 20 years. But 20 years is insignificant. If we were told you're going to live forever, how much more joyful we'd feel. Of course, people don't believe that they could live forever, although whether they believe it or not, they are living forever. In 8,400,000 species of life in the material world, they're living forever. Whether they like it or not, we're already alive, we're still alive, in spite of all the changes our body has gone through. None of us have disappeared yet. It's not that the body, you're 5 years old or 10 years old, and you become 20 years old and your soul died. The body's still going on but the soul died. No, we're exactly the same soul as we were when we were 5 years old. And we'll be back exactly the same person, the same soul, when we get another body, either spiritual or material. It's just that we're asleep. We don't know who we are. We're misidentifying ourselves with something we're not. Therefore, Arjuna, although apparently he was not acting as a friend to the people on the battlefield of Kurukshetra by shooting arrows at them. I mean, if you had a friend and every time you went to visit them, when you opened the door, they shot an arrow at you, you probably would think that, what kind of friend is this? How can Arjuna be the friend of these people on the battlefield of Kurukshetra? He's trying to kill them. At least most of the friends I have don't try to kill me. At least not that I know of. So Arjuna is actually their friend because he was giving them exactly what they really wanted, which was liberation, to live eternally. So the goal of life, the goal of our activities, as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, Yari Dekha Tarikaha Krishna Upadesh Amar Aga Guru Tare Desh. That whoever we meet, we should try to help them become conscious of Krishna. Because actually that's the innermost desire of every living entity. It may appear that people are striving for other things, but ultimately people are only striving for three things. They want security, but there's nothing more secure than finding out that we're eternal. Not only finding out, but realizing it. Everyone wants knowledge of how to become secure, but there's no better knowledge of how to become secure than to become Krishna conscious. Everyone wants to be secure forever and at the same time happy. And there's no higher happiness than Krishna consciousness. So the devotee, as it says in the Bhagavad Gita, Admopamyena Sarvatra, Samam Pashyati Arjuna, Sukham Vadukam, Suyogi Paramomotaha. That the yogis, they know by their own experience that there's nothing higher than to be in consciousness of Krishna. That if one is conscious of Krishna, then one automatically becomes conscious of one's real self. Just like when the sun comes up in the morning, in the light of the sun, one automatically can see oneself, one can see the sun, one can see everyone and everything in the light of the sun. So one who's in Krishna consciousness, that he automatically experiences his eternal existence, full of bliss and full of consciousness. Therefore, he doesn't want to put his mind on anything else other than Krishna. He doesn't want to use his intelligence for anything else other than becoming more absorbed in Krishna consciousness. And because he's using his intelligence to become absorbed in Krishna consciousness, therefore Krishna is reciprocating with him because his intelligence is directing his desires. Krishna is very kind. Krishna is in our heart. Whether we realize Krishna is in our heart or not, doesn't make any difference with whether Krishna is there or not. Just like a rabbit, when a rabbit's attacked by a bigger animal, then it has no escape. It puts its head in the sand, or actually that's the ostrich. The rabbit closes its eyes and proclaims, oh, there's nothing there, there's nothing there. But just by the rabbit closing its eyes and imagining that its enemy has gone away doesn't change anything. The fox or something of that nature will still eat the rabbit. In the same way, those who are in denial of the supersoul, thinking that there is no God, there is no higher power that's going to control my existence and determine what I'm going to do now and what I'm going to do in the future. One may deny that. Even if one wants to deny Krishna is personally being present in our heart as a supersoul and directing our activities and noting down our desires, and therefore directing our activities and according to our karma. Even one wants to deny the existence of the supersoul in our heart and not take advantage of the fact that we have the supremely intelligent person as our guide. You can ask Krishna any question, he knows the answer. Doesn't mean he's going to tell us the answer, but he knows the answer. He's not interested in telling us necessarily who's going to win the lottery next week. He might tell us that if we pray hard enough, we're serious enough. Krishna might reveal that to someone, because some people approach Krishna out of distress and Krishna helps them. And some people approach Krishna out of desire for economic development. Just like Gajendra. Gajendra was in distress. Now Krishna came riding on the back of Garuda. How did Vishnu know that Gajendra, the elephant, was in distress? That he had a crocodile on his foot? Because Krishna was in his heart. Gajendra didn't send him an email message. He didn't get out his mobile phone and call up Krishna 911. No, Krishna is in his heart, and therefore he understood Gajendra's distress, and Gajendra was asking for Krishna's help. So if a devotee, even a neophyte devotee, is in distress, and he asks for Krishna's help sincerely, then Krishna will come and help in some way. But we have to know what kind of help we should ask for. We should have some faith that there is a Krishna, and he is in my heart. And then if I ask for his help, he will help me. But we should also know what to ask for. Just like that lady who was walking in the forest with a heavy load of sticks on her head. And suddenly, all the sticks fell off her head, and she immediately began to cry out, "Oh, Govinda, help me. I'm all alone in the forest. All these sticks have fallen off my head. Help me. No one can put these sticks back on my head. Help me. I'm all alone." So she was so sincere in her calling out for Krishna that Krishna personally came and said, "Yes, my dear lady, what can I do for you?" So the lady said, "My dear Govinda, I'm all alone in the forest. I have to bring these sticks to the market in order to sell them, in order to get enough to live on. So please help me put the sticks back on my head. You're the only one who can do it." So Krishna said, "No problem." And he picked up the sticks and put her on her head and then disappeared. She could have asked for anything. She could have asked, "My dear Krishna, please send me back to the spiritual world." But instead, she wanted some sticks put back on her head, and Krishna reciprocated with her desire. So similarly, we have the source of everything, the person who has unlimited wealth, unlimited strength, unlimited knowledge, and he's in our heart, and we're desiring so many things. Put the sticks back on my head, give me a job, give me a house, give me a wife, give me a color TV, Om Jai Jagadisha Hari. So we're desiring so many things. We're asking Krishna for so many things. But if we ask Krishna for the intelligence by which we can go to him, then Krishna will send us to his devotees. So we can hear from Guru, from Sadhu and Shastra, who is actually our friends, trying to give us the real knowledge of how to make advancement so we can end all our problems and go back to the spiritual world. The real friends, anyone who's repeating Krishna's message as it's received in the simple succession, they're actually people's real friends. They're giving something real, something substantial, something that's eternal, the eternal soul. And anyone, however nice they may be and attractive they may be, if they're not helping one advance in some way towards Krishna consciousness, they're not actually our friends. They may help us temporarily, and that help temporarily may be an assistance in our endeavor to become Krishna conscious. But unless they understand unless they understand, we may take advantage of the help that some people give us in our progress towards Krishna consciousness. But unless we understand that real help that we can give people ultimately is to help them become Krishna conscious. And if we help them become Krishna conscious, then we're giving them the best service. We're their best friend. Just like Arjuna, he, by his own experience, understood that everyone should use their intelligence to fix their mind upon Krishna, because there's no higher happiness, there's no higher benefit than to be Krishna conscious. And therefore, because he was always doing that, even when he was fighting on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, therefore he was actually everyone's real friend. And we can also be our own friend, as Prabhupada wrote in the purport, that because one is a friend of everyone, because whatever he does, he does in such a way as to help people become Krishna conscious. As Prabhupada writes here. Because he knows that by becoming Krishna conscious, everyone could actually be satisfied, whether they know it or not. And because everyone is satisfied by his work, he is pure in consciousness. So again, what does it mean everyone is satisfied by his work? Go out on the street and try and distribute a book and see if everyone's satisfied by your work. There may be a few people who don't stop and buy the book. There may be a few people who don't stop and say, I wish I could buy the book, but you're doing great service, please keep it up. No, probably the majority of the people say, we'll ignore one. This is a useless beggar out in the street trying to sell something. Some people may even come up and say, why don't you get a job, do something significant? Get a job, build a tank or something. Do something good for humanity. So people don't know that what the devotee is doing, but because the devotee is working for the benefit of everyone, therefore, ultimately, the soul will be benefited by whatever a devotee is doing. Even if externally the person may exhibit some negative attitude towards the activities of the devotee, still the soul will be benefited in some way. What we're seeing is simply something superficial, the reactions of karma, that people don't always understand and appreciate the activities of the devotee. But ultimately, whatever the devotee is doing will aid to their real satisfaction. And therefore, the devotee is pure in consciousness because he knows he's actually doing the best service to everyone. They may not realize it. Hiranyakashipu didn't realize it, but that didn't discourage Prahlad Maharaj. He didn't say, oh, Father, I made a mistake. I'm sorry. I'll stop chanting Hare Krishna. I'll be a good son. Just tell me what to do. I'll make money for the family. I'll take care of you in old age. And if anyone tells me to worship God or Krishna, I'll say, I'll tell you about, I'll go see my father and ask him about it. But Prahlad Maharaj never stopped his activities of Krishna consciousness, although there was apparently a dissatisfaction on the part of his father. But ultimately, his father got the greatest benediction, the greatest satisfaction, even more satisfaction than he got from Brahma by getting a body which seemingly wouldn't die, but did die. He got the greatest satisfaction and benediction from his own son, Prahlad, because he got liberation. He got free from all suffering by realizing he was eternal. And because the devotee is working in Krishna consciousness, he's pure in consciousness. He knows he's working for the benefit of Krishna, who is everyone's best friend. And therefore, he has nothing better to do. There's nothing better. The mind is completely satisfied in ecstasy due to the pleasure of Krishna and his devotees. And therefore, his mind is controlled. And because his mind is always fixed in Krishna, there's no chance of his being deviated from Krishna, because there's no higher experience than that. There's nothing else that's even compared to it. Even Brahman liberation, Prahlad Maharaj said, if Brahman realization was multiplied 100 trillion times, it wouldn't equal to one atomic particle of one drop in the ocean of devotional service. So Brahman is not something to be thinking that it's insignificant compared to our present existence. That the maximum happiness we can get on this planet through the materialistic activities in Indraloka, they experience happiness 100 times more than we're experiencing here. But on Mahaloka, they experience where they perform sacrifice. The residents there enjoy life 1,000 times more than Indra does on his planet. But on Siddhaloka and Tapaloka, where they have mystic powers, the residents there enjoy life 1,000 times more than the residents of Mahaloka. But on Brahmaloka, where people live for 311 trillion, 40 billion years, they enjoy life 1,000 times more than those on Siddhaloka or Tapaloka. And Brahman is 100,000 times more happiness than on Brahmaloka. So where does that leave our happiness? But even that happiness in Brahmaloka, in liberation, it was multiplied 100 trillion times. Try to imagine that. It wouldn't equal to an atomic fraction of one drop in the ocean of devotional service. Therefore, even those who are liberated, those who reach the Bhava Bhakti platform, that they deride even the conception of liberation. And Bhava Bhakti is just one ray in the sunlight of prema. One ray of sunlight compared to the entire sky lit up by the sunlight. So in other words, one who's actually in Krishna consciousness, there's nothing that one will actually be hankering for or lamenting about, because one has reached the perfection of life and the happiness is always increasing. Therefore, it's compared to an ocean. Anandam buddhivardhanam patipanam panamritasvadanam. It gives one a taste of the happiness in the ocean of devotional service, which is always increasing. And because the mind is always fixed in Krishna's service, is always, therefore one is always being directed by Krishna directly, and all the senses are always engaged in Krishna's service. And therefore, whatever one is doing is always in Krishna's consciousness. So this way, the man in Krishna consciousness or the woman in Krishna consciousness, his senses are completely controlled. And a person who's acting as an instrument of Krishna, he can't be offensive to anyone because Krishna loves everyone. He only wants the best for everyone. The whole material world is set up simply to bring people back to the real happiness of life. So one who becomes a perfect instrument of Krishna, then he only acts as Krishna would want him to act. Actually, Krishna is acting through him. He's simply an instrument for Krishna under the internal energy of Krishna, and therefore he's the best friend of everyone in all circumstances. Therefore, we should simply try to chant Hare Krishna, try to serve the deities, try to hear Srimad Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita, try to serve the devotees. Especially, we should always act in the direction of the pure devotee, the purest devotee, Srila Prabhupada, and try to make the atmosphere spiritual by spreading Krishna consciousness. Then, as Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Prabhupada told Prabhupada, our Prabhupada, then you'll be doing the best service to yourself and the best service for everyone else. We may not save the world, but we can save ourselves by practicing Krishna consciousness, and surely some part of the world will also be saved, along with ourselves. When Prabhupada was in Portland, Oregon in 1967, before he left to go to India to recover from his health problems, he was giving initiation to different people. And one person asked him in the audience, Swamiji, what are you doing for humanity? What is this movement doing for humanity? So Prabhupada asked the man, he said, you're practicing Krishna consciousness? The man said, yes. He said, is it helping you? The man said, yes. He said, that's what I'm doing for humanity. I'm helping you. You're part of humanity too. So we don't have to worry about saving everyone. That's up to the super soul to do that. That's what he's been doing since time immemorial. He's been successful. Many people have gone back to the spiritual world. We may not have the potency, as Prabhupada said, we may not be able to get all the animals in the forest to dance and chant Hare Krishna, as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was able to do when he passed through the Jharikanda forest. But at least we can get one or two animals in the present society to dance and chant Hare Krishna. Two-legged animals, probably would say. And if we can't do that, at least we should dance and chant. And then we'll be doing good for all living entities. When Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was depressed, and he asked Haridas Thakur, how will all these non-living entities be liberated, such as the trees and the grass, etc.? So Haridas Thakur said, by the loud chanting of the holy names, all living entities will be liberated to some extent or another. Even the inanimate objects like the trees and the plants will also be liberated. Just by hearing the holy name being present. So we should go on with our activities. We should know that there's nothing better for suffering humanity and for our own suffering existence than to go on with our Krishna consciousness, and gradually everything will be revealed to us, what the real value of Krishna consciousness really is. Or as Dhruva Maharaj said, I was looking for some broken pieces of glass, trying to get a kingdom greater than that of my great-grandfather, Lord Brahma. But now that I've gotten you, now I've gotten a real diamond. So what do I need broken pieces of glass for? Okay, thank you very much. I'll stop there. Are there any questions? Yes.
Maharaj, Rangadevi Devidasi have a question. Mother Rangadevi, спрашивайте.
Prashad.
Вас не слышно, Матаджи Рангадеви. Микрофон включите, пожалуйста.
Actually, I'll be right back. I just have to, I'll be right back.
Матаджи Рангадеви, включите микрофон, пожалуйста. На телефоне это слева внизу такой микрофончик нарисован, туда нажать надо. Матаджи Рангадеви, вы камеру выключили. Если вы меня слышите, то можете просто текстом написать мне в WhatsApp вопрос, я зачитаю Гуру Махараджу. Ну, если вы не можете микрофон свой включить, если не получается.
Back. What was the question?
Guru Maharaj, Nitai Priya Devidasi want ask question with Mataji Rangadevi. We try turn on his microphone.
Okay.
Mataji Nitai Priya, спрашивайте, пожалуйста.
Вопросы?
Матаджи Нитай Прия, вы можете микрофон включить, пожалуйста? Я вижу, что вы здесь, но микрофон не включен. Я сейчас...
Такой вопрос. Хотел ли Шрила Прабхупада, чтобы все преданные были браманами и занимались исключительно проповедью, или он хотел бы, чтобы преданные занимались деятельностью как браманы, катри, вайши, шудры? Вот,
мне тоже не разрешает unmute микрофон. В Zoom. Я не могу. Вы единственный, кто в Zoom может задавать вопрос. Давайте.
Ну, я микрофон включал, там все услышали вопрос. Давайте я включил микрофон, озвучивайте, там слышно будет на английском.
Okay. So, dear Guru Maharaj, did Srila Prabhupada want the devotees and to preach and do other Brahminical actions in their everyday lives, or he actually wanted them to be kshatriyas and vaishyas and do other kind of activities?
Well, for instance, Prabhupada said in one early letter,
Например, Шрила Прабхупада сказал в одном из
that he wanted devotees to read his books, that he was going to give a test. This is beginning of 69. And that all his sons, and he wanted the sons and daughters to inherit the title of Bhaktivedanta. And then in the future, by 1976, maybe they could all initiate. That's what Prabhupada wanted. 1976 came, Prabhupada didn't authorize anyone to initiate. So certainly Prabhupada would want all of us to go back to the spiritual world tomorrow or today or in 5 minutes. But that doesn't mean we're going to do it. Therefore, come in. Although Prabhupada had desires like that, and he gave us the methodology by which we can advance towards perfection. But he understood, as he said in the conversation in 1977, that there are different stages of reaching perfection. And not everyone can reach perfection immediately, and therefore they have to do what's necessary to gradually advance towards perfection. So those who cannot seriously take up the process of pure devotional service, then Prabhupada wanted to give them the opportunity to gradually advance towards that perfection of life through Varnashram Dharma. Now, he didn't expect the devotees who take up Varnashram Dharma would give up the chanting of the holy name. He expected that they'd go on with their activities in the mature world and at the same time, simultaneously, try to make advancement in Krishna consciousness and pure devotional service. But Varnashram Dharma is simply the perfection of providing for the material necessities of life in the easiest possible way. There's no better economic system than Varnashram Dharma, protecting the cows and the bulls and utilizing them for getting the basic necessities of life. There's no better system. All other systems are simply complications on that system. So because we cannot reach perfection all at once, therefore Varnashram Dharma is the best way that we can work in the material world and provide for our families and provide for ourselves, and at the same time have time and energy to invest in pure devotional service. Now we claim that we're all pure devotees, we're all engaged in pure devotional service, but how many of us are actually spending time constantly preaching and simply engaged in pure devotional service? We all need most of us need jobs. We have to maintain our families. We have to do so many different things. And when we have time, then we chant Hare Krishna and we read Prabhupada's books, hopefully, etc. So it's not that all the devotees all over the world are only engaged in chanting Hare Krishna and preaching about Krishna. Most of the devotees are engaged in practical activities, of which Varnashram Dharma would be the ideal method of fulfilling those material we strive for in different ways. Now, as far as Kshatriyas, right now I don't think, although we need managers and things like that, I don't think we have so many real Kshatriyas. Prabhupada envision for ourselves right now that if we have that tendency towards being a manager, we can utilize it to manage the Hare Krishna movement, the Sankirtan movement. If we have ability to get some resources, then we should use those resources at least in the spreading of Krishna consciousness. And if we have the ability to communicate and express the philosophy of Krishna consciousness, then we should do that without trying to declare ourselves to be something great or superior or even God himself, because we have some little bit of knowledge. So Prabhupada wanted to utilize our tendencies in the Sankirtan movement. And at the same time, if we can engage ourselves directly in the Sankirtan movement and utilize our talents, we can also maintain our families and farm communities or get some occupation by which we manufacture, say, some clothing for dhotis or saris or manufacture beads, so that we can maintain our families and at the same time in a sattvic way, and at the same time develop our Krishna consciousness. So they're not mutually opposed to each other. They're both, they help each other. Varnashram and Krishna consciousness go together. They're part of Krishna's process to elevating people back to the spiritual world. Okay, I think we'll stop there. Thank you very much.
Ой, можно вопрос?
Okay.
Я прошу прощения. Вопрос очень важный, времени просто маловато решить его, поэтому нужно ваш взгляд на это. У нас маленькая ятра в городе Гомель, в Белоруссии. Вот, и у нас не было еще функциональных божеств. Большие были, а маленьких не было. И вот вроде бы как нашлись такие божества, но исходя из того, что они очень дорогие, из Вриндавана, ятра выкупить не может, но я хочу их забрать себе. Можно ли будет это сделать, если вы дадите такое благословение, чтобы они у меня были, если там какие-то проблемы будут, я, может быть, верну в храм, но очень хотелось бы, чтобы у меня были божества. Вот такой вопрос. Если это будет домашний стандарт. Ой, у меня русского перевода нет.
Да.
Артем, Агнихотра перевести можно? Вопрос.
Что это вопрос?
Вопрос, можно ли будет взять божества, выкупить и взять божества домой, если будет на то ваше благословение? Маленькие божества, домашние.
Ничего не могу.
Я нажимаю секунду. На
Агнихотра, вы можете перевести, то ничего не понимаю.
Вот, есть. Все, давайте.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Did Maharaj say yes? Because I can hear myself.
Da.
Da, okay. So Maharaj, this Mataji is from Gomel, and she said that in their yatra, they have they always wanted to have the deities, and she's asking your blessings if she can buy the deities in Vrindavan to be their caretaker. If you will be giving her the blessings to take care of them, eventually they're planning to have a little more of the worship of the deities at the temple. But because it's expensive to support them, temple cannot do this right now. But she's willing and she's able and she really wants to do it herself. If you will give her your blessings to get the deities put in Vrindavan. Maybe, she didn't specify which deities. Maybe we should ask her, is it a Gaurnitai or I don't know.
Yes, of course we have to ask which deities.
Okay. Матаджи, а божества какие? Gaurnitai, Рада Кришна, какие божества?
Gaurnitai.
Gaurnitai.
You have second initiation?
У вас вторая инициация есть?
Anyhow, Gaurnitai you can worship. That's all right. You have my blessing.
Gaurnitai вы можете поклоняться даже без второй инициации.
But not big ones, little ones.
Выключайте меня, Агнихотра, чтобы...
Спасибо.
Hare Krishna. But you should make sure that the authorities there are going to take care of them. Понимаете? That you're just getting them on behalf of the temple, but you have to make sure that the temple is going to take responsibility for them eventually. Okay.
Агнихотра, переведите.
Did someone translate what I just said, Agnihotra? Savangalata, did you translate what I said? Hare Krishna?
Hare Krishna.
Guru Maharaj, everything okay? She hearing your answer. Vangavata translate everything okay.
Okay, good. Thank you very much. Grandhara Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Gaur Premanande. Hari Bol.
Харибол.